Welcome to the Project with Sam and Lewis, the podcast that looks at projects throughout pop culture and history. I'm Sam.
And I'm Lewis.
And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the movie Project Bigfoot from 2017.
We certainly are. It wasn't quite what I expected going into it, but...
No. Did you know that it was a comedy?
Yes, I didn't know it was like a Blair Witch parody.
Yeah, it pretty much is, which is quite good because we did Blair Witch only
did.
a month ago, didn't we? Yeah, about a month ago actually, wasn't it? So yeah.
Yeah, it was the end of Project October.
Yeah, final episode of Project October. Yeah, I thought I had quite a fun time with it.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be terrible, and then
like
even about 5 minutes in, I was like, actually, this is quite enjoyable.
I realised I wrote a little bit because I've kind of started to put a vague rating at the end, just so like this is what I thought at the time, and then see if it changes. And I put there that it's one of the ones I enjoyed in the way it was meant to be, rather than you know, like almost taking the piss or I think unintentionally.
They do well to like from the start be like, this is what this film is.
Yes, like there's some good stuff at this. I mean, it doesn't.
Well, we'll get into it.
Not everything hits, but it was a good one. But yeah, before we get into that, how are you, Lewis?
Yeah, not bad. I feel like it's a run up to Christmas now, so it's kind of all focused on that. Yeah, I've managed to do like all my Christmas shopping.
Yeah, you mentioned
got paid like last week, so I was just like, before I run out of money, just get all the Christmas presents.
Yeah. I was saying to you, I haven't. I get paid a little bit late in the job I'm in at the moment, so haven't really been able to do any Christmas shopping, and I work kind of in retail and stuff, well, hospitality retail kind of thing, so I'm kind of very in the Christmas thing without having I'm sorting other people's Christmas presents, and I'm constantly reminded that I haven't sorted my own.
I even came to your work to look for a Christmas thing.
I got to get paid to talk to you, which is the first time that's ever happened, I think.
But yeah, I think I had like something like 10 gifts to get total, and I've got 9 so far. So.
Oh, well done. Yeah, I've got 1 out of however many. So
I say 10. I just plucked that number off the top of my head. Probably around 10.
You're about 1 in 10. 1 in 10 left.
Yeah,
statistically speaking. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah. Just chilling, basically, aren't we?
Yeah,
just chilling. We travelled here together for the first time, didn't we?
Met you from work because it's kind of weird that we haven't done that in the past because you work near where I live.
We figured that out recently, didn't we? Yeah, but first time either of us have worked in proximity to each other.
Yeah, it's weird considering how long we've known each other.
Before we get into anything else, if you want to skip ahead, time codes will be in the episode description, the show notes, There's not another way of saying it, but if there is another way, it's in there as well.
Yep.
And our first segment will be Project News.
Yeah. So, as I've always done, Googled the word project, picked one, but you sent me one earlier this week, so we'll talk about that first.
Yeah.
Another Vice article, which we've done a couple of times in the past.
Yeah, you can tell as I mentioned, follow them on Facebook.
Yeah, number 1 fan.
Number 1.
So the headline: we have now entered the satirical comedy era of COVID-19. Michael M. Bilandic's Project Space 13 follows a performance artist whose big break is scuppered by the pandemic. Madness naturally ensues. It sounds quite interesting. I'm kind of surprised there's not been more satirical pandemic stuff.
Yeah,
like there was the David Tennant, Michael Sheen.
Yes,
Amazon. Was it Amazon series?
I think it was on it's on Netflix, but it was also BBC. But it might be on Amazon as well. They might have got the rights for, because in that which I think was based on a real thing, they were gonna be doing a play together. Yeah, and then they decided to, instead of doing the play, they moved it into a kind of satirical thing where their play got cancelled and they play exaggerated versions of themselves and they're practicing on Zoom, and then it gets folded into other stuff. I only watched a couple of episodes, but it was good stuff. Like we've talked about them before. They're a good duo and they work really well together.
Became good friends on Good Omens.
I think even before that, potentially they might have worked together. Right. But they're
But yeah,
in recent years, anyway.
Anyway, this is Bilandic's latest film, Project Space 13, is a pandemic-inspired satire that follows a performance artist called Nate, who finally lands a prestigious show at the Manhattan Gallery, only to have it shut down by COVID-19. So pretty much what I just said before. Yeah. And I think it's just like a kind of descent into madness over like finally getting that big break.
The little bits I saw, it says it's kind of surrealist and like kind of cyberpunk themes. It said I didn't watch. I kind of skimmed through the trailer because I thought, to be honest, this is a new release with Project in the title, which is what we've been kind of hoping for.
We've been putting all our money on the Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, project. Which I keep seeing touted as Oppenheimer, so hopefully that's not the case. But yeah, even though we've mentioned it today, it would be a good one to check out. Maybe in the next couple of episodes if we get a slot.
Yeah, is it out already?
I don't know if it is.
See if there's a release.
The other thing it reminded me of was I haven't actually seen it, but Amy's a big fan of the Bo Burnham special Inside,
right?
Which is a similar thing, but like a real thing where he was he took like 5 years off doing his comedy and live music and stuff because he was having like personal issues. I think it was panic attacks and stuff. And this is from the little I know. And then as he was kind of preparing to go back in early January 2020, obviously everything hit, and then he had to quarantine, and then he did all these songs, and it's from what the bits I've seen, it seems like really good stuff, and it's very like it's witty, it's kind of in introspective, and so it similar kind of.
It does say all 3 episodes are out. Streaming.
Oh, so it's an episodic thing, okay.
But only 3, so it's not gonna be. It'll be like a short.
Yeah, depending on the site, we could condense it into an episode.
I think the channel it mentioned is an American one that we don't get, but it might have a UK
we could
equivalent.
Find it. I mean, if they're half an hour, 45-minute episodes, we could probably watch them all and then just talk. About it
just
all
do a summary of all 3.
Interesting. It's probably it looked fairly low budget from the. I literally like skipped to the middle. Watched like 2 seconds and then thought, I don't want to spoil this for myself.
So if any of the listeners have watched it and have thoughts on it, let us know. And
please do,
we'll see if we agree with you.
I think while it's while it's hot and fresh, it might be a good idea. We'll see. We've got a Christmas project in the works for the next couple of weeks. So it may be that we might have to do it in the new year.
We're not doing a whole Christmas month like we did for Project October, because you'd soon run out of Christmas films.
Well, there's not as many with Project in the title as you'd think. Which is, I suppose it's sci-fi, horror, that sort of thing lends itself more to the title, doesn't it? But
so my other news headline. Guillermo del Toro still wants to make his unmade H.P. Lovecraft project and pitched it to Netflix.
Who's that?
Guillermo del Toro. What did I say wrong?
Guillermo del Toro.
Guillermo del Toro. So he wants to adapt Mountains of Madness.
Yes.
It's a Lovecraft
book. How much do you know about that project?
Very little.
So as far as I know, it was in the works in the lead up to Prometheus. And then Prometheus came out, and because there are vaguely similar things, like plot points of expedition, ancient civilization, weird shit happening, the studio decided to pull funding and back out.
When did Prometheus come out?
2013. I don't know.
It mentions here.
It was in the works for a while though.
Del Toro
2012.
Del Toro first tried to adapt the project way back in 2006, and then later in 2011 with Tom Cruise attached to star.
Because Mountains is it out the Mountains of Madness? It's a Arctic expedition. I think it's originally set in the in the 20s or teens. And they go to the Arctic, and weird shit happens. They find like structures that don't look right, and like mind-bending
it's
stuff.
Not a Cthulhu one, is it?
I don't think so.
Just other Lovecraftian
but a lot
stuff.
of them they do tie in, and it's the whole mythos, and there's multiple elder gods which have unpronounceable names.
Cthulhu's kind of the best known Lovecraftian monster.
I've actually got, I don't know if you can see, Lewis, that green book up on the shelf.
Yes,
that is a beautiful Lovecraft kind of compendium.
Nice.
Which I'm ashamed to say I haven't read much of, but we got that for Christmas, I think last year before, which it's got it in there.
I was planning on reading the first Cthulhu book at some point. I had it on a wish list on Amazon for a while and never got around to it.
Yeah, there's some good stuff. I mean, that's all in chronological order from when he wrote it. So I read through a couple of the early short stories, and there's a weird one about somebody who finds like a ruin, and they go in and they find a secret room, and there's like a wizard who's been there for like 200 years.
Nice.
And it's just like that, and then they have like an altercation, and that's literally it.
It's one of those things, like, if we read through now, we'd recognize loads of bits because so much has been taken from Lovecraft.
Absolutely. And Guillermo del Toro is like super
nerdy,
inspired by like all the Hellboy designs of the creatures.
Yeah, also did he do Pan's Labyrinth?
A
lot of that is kind of weird.
That's it. Yeah,
kind of
lots
shit.
of weird, like, because he does a lot of creature stuff, doesn't he? Yeah, that'll be good though. I really hope that they do, and I think maybe Peter Jackson was gonna do something at some point.
Seems like his kind of thing.
Yeah. Even like King Kong, like the whole vibe of his film up to, you know, them going to Skull Island and everything up to New York is all kind of, that could be a Lovecraftian thing if you swapped out the monsters for more Lovecraftian monsters.
Yeah, definitely.
That's very Mountains of Madness. It's that kind of
And to be honest, like Lord of the Rings, King Kong, like Lovecraft could be like a natural.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could say the same of Del Toro, like because Shape of Water was kind of weird monster as well, wasn't it?
And then there's like other stuff. Like I've watched videos of because there's a surprisingly low amount of Lovecraftian adaptations. There's lots of films which are inspired.
It's quite hard to adapt.
Because there was a Nicolas Cage film last year, The Color Out of Space,
right?
Because he's on a bit of a like run of doing indie strange films. And that's a direct it's a modern transplanted, adaptation. That's with the same title and everything.
Yeah, it's funny
there's not as many as you'd think there would be. Considering
considering as well, we get like a War of the Worlds like every 15 years.
Well, that's, I think, partly. So I watched a video essay, which I don't know what it's called, but if you search like why are there not more Lovecraftian films, what the guy says is that because a lot of it is really hard to adapt because it's not just the creature horror we see. A lot of it is like people being driven to madness by like cosmic truths, and it's like someone will discover something that just drives them mad, and it's especially early on, it's like really hard to film and kind of capture that.
It's hard to show. Whereas in a book, you could have like inner dialogue and breakdown into madness.
And it's like even the geometry, like it's called like non-Euclidean geometry or something. Basically, like these ruins, like you'll look at them from one angle and they'll look different in different ways, and it's like really otherworldly elements that, at least pre-CG is just like impossible to do. Do you know what I mean? And I think it'd be really good to see more. So good. That's some interesting.
Yeah, hopefully
stuff.
that gets done. I reckon there'll be enough interest in it.
Yeah,
like, if they hyped it, because like, you probably would have thought like before they made it like the Witcher kind of thing. It's like you maybe have doubts that there was enough people interested in that, and then they made it, got a big star as the main guy, and it was a really popular series, and they're making it. Season 2 comes out fairly soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess with the game, it's it's based on the books rather than the game, really.
But I feel like Lovecraft is better known than The Witcher.
Yeah, there's some weird little TV shows and weirdly like partly inspired things.
Yeah,
but there's a real big untapped.
If they really put their weight behind it, it could be a massive success.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a big gap in the kind of horror atmospheric kind of market. Yeah, cool. Well, we'll keep an eye on that one, won't we?
Yeah. Hopefully they call it Project Lovecraft.
Project Mountains of Madness.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else on that?
No, that is our new segment done.
Nice. So we are going to be talking about today Project Bigfoot.
The Bigfoot Project, actually.
Is it? Because I just Googled it and it comes up on Google as Bigfoot Project Bigfoot.
It does, but if you look at the posters, they all say the Bigfoot Project.
Because there's a debate at the start about what they should call it, isn't it? Okay.
But
I said
Either
the wrong
way, it's
thing
got
at the
project in
start,
the
but
title.
that's fine. It's got project in the title. Information, Lewis. What have you got?
First, Google review.
Yes. Part of the information.
So, a team of amateur filmmakers journey into the backwoods of Georgia in search of the mysterious creature known as Bigfoot.
Yes.
Very simple, straightforward, doesn't really tell you much, but yeah, that is it.
Yeah, it does hit the spot there. It doesn't really mention how, as we said, it is a comedy.
Yeah, and it's very kind of a parody of Blair Witch.
Yeah,
like the setup of like interviewing people, then walking through the woods for 2 weeks,
even quite heavily later on, isn't it?
Yeah,
we will get to that.
And just thinking back, actually, there's even some jokes in it.
That's what I mean. Yeah, they talk about the map a couple of times.
Yeah.
There's a couple of very funny bits.
I didn't click it was Blair Witch thing until they were wandering around the woods for ages.
Yes.
But then thinking back so much it from the start is
the colourful locals, the stories, like it's very
Blair
even
Witch.
There's a bit with an old man which I think is framed like almost exactly the same. Do you know what I mean? The bit
I'm glad we watched Blair Witch a month ago.
Yeah. Because otherwise I think Blair Witch would have felt more derivative.
Yeah.
You know.
But also, like, I hadn't seen Blair Witch, so
that's it.
I probably wouldn't have appreciated this as much.
That's what I mean. But when we watched Blair Witch, you would have been like,
"Oh, this is like the Bigfoot Project." So yeah, it's directed by Ricardo Herrera.
Yep.
Who also produced, wrote, and edited it, which usually isn't a good sign, but
but for something like a small budget comedy, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
It also said on IMDb that he plays Jerry. And I was looking out for a character called Joey for the whole film, and I don't think he turns up.
I think he might have been one of the locals then.
Possibly, yeah. Although I wrote most of them down.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, I thought that would be a thing to do. And
yeah, I haven't. He's done a couple of little short films.
Yeah, he's mainly done shorts. He's done lots of like assistant director stuff.
Looking at it here, I think
he was the production assistant on one episode of The Walking Dead. It's the most famous thing he's done.
One of the short films that he's done, Bill the Alien, seems to star Arnie Pantoja, who is Mickey, the moustache guy.
Oh, in this, yeah, yes.
So,
they've got a few people. There's a few people that pit. So them, Andy Goldenberg and Emily O'Brien, two of the people, are also in Iris, one of his shorts that came out a couple of years after this. So yeah, the main guy, like the leader of the team, is played by Andy Goldenberg.
That's right.
Who's best known as being a YouTuber.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
it's Golden Tusk. He's got something like 60 million YouTube views in total or something. So he's fairly popular.
Substantial. It's a little bit like in Project X, one of the guys was a YouTuber. I think the camera guy, Dax.
Yeah.
They got him from YouTube, and then he was in a couple of things.
Andy Goldenberg also has a couple of small roles in other stuff in Jack and Jill, the Adam Sandler film.
Yeah, not seen it, but yeah.
And he's in an episode of Broad City.
Yes, I did see that.
I didn't recognise him from, but
he has a familiar look, but the look isn't unique to him.
Yeah.
He looks a little bit like Andy Samberg.
Yeah.
A young Andy Samberg with glasses.
It's also kind of like that big curly hair.
Yeah.
Kind of looks almost like stereotypically Jewish comedian.
Yeah, it's like a Jewish comedian, kind of modern Jew. And he also looks a little bit like Weird Al at times.
Yeah, I see that.
And also, I don't know if you ever saw, I think it was called Love on Netflix. There's a guy who looks quite like him in that, but it wasn't him clearly because he's
the other main person, Emily O'Brien, who plays was Jamie.
Yeah, she's done quite a bit, hasn't she?
She's done loads of like voice work for games.
I saw that. Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy,
Death Stranding, God of War, Call of Duty.
Yeah, and she was one of the characters in Love, Death and Robots as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think she's in a couple of episodes of that. So
yeah, it says Eve / the woman, so I don't know if that's the same episode.
Yeah, but then there's a couple other guys I didn't write down, but also they've got Kevin P. Farley, the younger brother of Chris Farley.
I was gonna say,
and you can see a similarity.
I thought I recognised this guy, and he was very character actory.
Yeah.
Do you know much about Chris Farley?
Just like the bits and bobs, like SNL
and he was he died fairly young. I think he was very unhealthy. He was quite overweight, and he did a lot of drugs. He was quite partier, as a lot of Robin Williams and that. They're all
a lot of the SNL cast in the 80s and 90s.
He was the original voice for Shrek.
Yes,
and they recorded at least a couple hundred hours of dialogue, and it was designed after him originally, the character.
Yeah,
and then when he died, Mike Myers.
Which is kind of weird. It's such an iconic voice now.
Yeah, and do you know as well? Actually, Mike Myers originally recorded it without the Scottish accent, and they did, I think, almost the whole film, and then he pushed to change it to the Scottish accent,
which was a good choice, I think.
Yeah, it's also funny that he'd already done Austin Powers 2 at that point. So, Fat Bastard, the Scottish character, is pretty much the inspiration for Shrek's voice, because the voice is not that different.
Yeah,
but yeah.
There was no ratings on Rotten Tomatoes.
Fewer
than 50 audience reviews, so they couldn't get one.
Woo.
There was one critic review from horrornews.net who gave it 4 out of 5.
I feel like that's a bit harsh.
I saw it and I was like, because I saw the IMDb rating.
It's horror review though, so yeah.
4 out of 5 though. It's pretty good.
Oh, 4 out of 5.
What do you think I said?
I don't know, out of 10.
The IMDb though is 4.7. Which seems harsh.
That's what I mean. That seems harsh.
Lower than the Infinity Project.
Yeah, no, this is much
better than the Infinity Project.
Better, yeah.
Obviously, couldn't find budget or box office.
No, I'd say, couple of thousand.
The review on horrornews.net described the budget as super low. So let's go on that.
I mean, I watched the very short credits, and a lot of I can't remember the name of the artist, but a lot of the music is from a well-known royalty-free artist that you can get online.
Yeah.
And some of it shows, but because it's a comedy, it's, what would you call it? Like happy-go-lucky kind of background music.
Yeah.
It works for it because but they've obviously not paid for any of the music.
It's set as like a found footage thing, even though it's not found footage. But it's all on like handheld cameras, so fairly cheap. And most of it's just walking through woods.
It's one of those ones where it could have been a found footage in that they could have all been killed at the end.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, they're not.
They're not.
One of them was almost killed, kind of. But in a funny way. Yeah.
So the film opens with a news report, a very poor green screen in the studio, basically describing a Georgia man who has apparently seen a Bigfoot. See, I think if I'm right, Bigfoot is traditionally from like the West and like almost the Rocky Mountain.
I think
they kind of make a point of him being in the South is kind of a bit weird for Bigfoot and a bit out of place.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but then it seems like, there's lots of things about Bigfoot. Like Bigfoot is a species in most. I think people who take it seriously, there's not one Bigfoot. The big feet are species. I don't know what the plural is. And in this, we do find out that maybe there is more than one.
Oh, we'll have to wait and see.
We have to wait and see. But yeah, in this, it's very much like Bigfoot is a southerner kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not really, but yeah. And this, what's he called? Michael Jones?
Michael Jones.
Michael Jones is, which is
who's
a funny
like
name.
a stereotypical redneck.
He's kind of like slack-jawed, yokel kind of thing.
Yeah, very like Cletus from The Simpsons.
Yes, yeah. And he's kind of like, what does he say? I saw him at night and he was big.
And he was like right in front. He was like, how, like, can you describe him? And he says, big always gonna be big.
Because he's like, are you sure that it couldn't have been something else? And he's like, big always gonna be big.
Yeah, there's some great quotes from the interviewed people in this.
There is some.
But yeah, then it cuts and it have the title credits of the Bigfoot Project, and then it changes to like Project Bigfoot, and it's
done in different fonts and stuff.
Yeah, and they're kind of arguing about whether it's called the Bigfoot Project or Project Bigfoot. And I was like, you know what, this is quite funny. I'm quite enjoying this little bag of
forth. And they say like, no one ever reads it out loud, but it's like they're literally reading it out loud.
Yeah, and they also why are we reading this?
It's like, why is this in here? Like, yeah, it's them having. And who is that? So that's the main guy, Steve. And is it?
I think it's Moose.
Is it Moose? Yeah. So we can go through the characters in just a sec. I'll probably just do it now, shall we? Because they got the found footage kind of.
Yeah. Intro. So like, we'll quickly like day one, they're in the car. He kind of introduces the myth of Bigfoot. This is Steve, the leader.
He says he's been
Captain Steve, as he calls himself.
Captain Steve. He says he's been studying Bigfoot for 10 years. So he's the real big push, and he's the one who really believes. And then his friend is Mickey.
Mickey, who's kind of a weird, like, squirmy guy who's got like a pedo moustache.
Yeah, and he's quite short, and he's very like
awkward,
not confident at all.
Yeah,
and he is kind of. We don't really find out his position on Bigfoot. He's along for the ride, kind of thing.
Yeah,
really?
He's willing to believe.
Yeah,
and we have Moose, who's like a big guy who's very skeptical.
Yeah, quite like I'm a tough guy, but it's clearly like he's very overweight. Like he says he's got a gun and stuff.
He almost seems like the sort of character that Nick Frost would play in one of like the Cornetto trilogy.
That's it. Yeah, like occasionally he'll have a bit of a Jack Black moment, but he's not as charismatic. He also sounds a lot like Marshall from How I Met Your Mother. I don't know if you ever noticed.
He kind of as well looks like the other guy, My Name Is Earl, not the main guy.
Yeah,
the other
who's
one.
now like insanely ripped. Have you seen?
Really?
Yeah, like he's super ripped. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, he's like that guy.
Yeah, and they're on their way and they pick up the camera woman. And at first they're like, oh, I could do the camera. And then this like hot woman comes out.
Yeah, and Mickey's like, oh, I played flag football with her. And then when she comes out, he's like, she's so hot and fast.
Yeah. And that is Jamie, who's our camera operator.
Yes. And I think she's like maybe she's assistant director or something. She's got some other filmmaking responsibilities. Oh, Mickey's a sound guy. Did we say that?
Yeah. We then get a very like Blair Witch thing where they're all kind of in a hotel room and
it's exactly the same as actually thinking about it.
Like, that's what I mean. There's like going back through this, there's going to be so many bits that's like, oh yeah, that's Blair Witch, that's Blair Witch. But they do like, unlike Blair Witch, a more specific like introduce all the people and for the documentary. So you get Mickey, who's like really awkward, doesn't know what to say. He's the audio mixer. It comes up with a little title thing, Mickey audio mixer.
Don't remember that.
Unless
I watched a different version again.
Oh God, not again. Like you get.
So what about the time looping?
Please don't. I don't think I can do that again. Yeah, I mean, like they do in a documentary, it comes up in like the bottom left, like
yeah.
And he mentioned several times that he's like 5'4" and he's giving like his whole life story.
Yeah, they do an intro and he's doing it. They say, "Oh, it's not eHarmony or something," don't they?
Yeah,
because he's like, "I like this," and it's like he's not.
Yeah. And then we get Jamie, who's a researcher / camera op. And her perspective is like, it's going to be fun. Like,
yeah, she's quite a positive attitude. She has a bit of a tough time with it.
Yeah, but I think because she's researched Bigfoot, she's quite keen on the idea.
Yeah,
she's not a strong believer either way, but she's like, it's worth looking into.
Yeah, so Mickey and Jamie are both seem a bit like middle ground on the Bigfoot side of things.
Then we get Moose who's the camera op. And he's kind of indifferent to the whole thing and he thinks Bigfoot's bullshit.
Yeah, he's pretty much like
he's just there because like his friends are going.
Yeah.
And then finally Steve, who likes to call himself Captain Steve.
Yeah.
He's the team leader. He strongly believes in Bigfoot and has done like 10 years of research.
Yeah, which I guess just means he's been interested in it for 10 years.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't like he's not a professional in any manner of it, really.
No.
He likes to think he is, and he does a bit of kind of Bear Grylls stuff later, doesn't he? He's talking about wind direction. And at one point, it's quite funny. He holds up his hands like a sundial, and he's like, it's about 2:43. He's like,
that's not how that works.
Like, yeah, you have... we get... a bit quite soon. I don't know if have you got anything before Blood Brothers?
It's just that they then cuts to day 2 and they're on their way to their first interview.
Oh yeah, and I think what is it? Moose says, "Oh, who's editing the film?" And he's like, "My cousin edited a short film I made." And then it just cuts to this film, Blood Brothers, with a Z at the end.
Yeah, and it's like a prison break between two brothers, and he plays both. But one's got like a bandana eye patch
and slightly a grayer beard.
Yeah, and it's like really amateur, but it's quite
really funny. And it reminded me, I think we spoke about it last week. And I said, "Oh, I've got some stuff on YouTube when I was younger." Like it's very much
it's deliberately made as that kind of thing. Like,
and it's like one will run off screen and then it will really badly cut. Like the camera will move and then the other one runs on. And they're like, "There's an empty house," and it's like a little kid's playhouse.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
I was like, that, like between like the title cards and like that, I'm like, these guys like are very aware of what they're doing.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, like arguably that some of the yeah, it's not a hit throughout, but there's some, especially early on,
a little later on, but
it sets the bar of what your expectations.
And at this point, I was
really
like, why the hell has this got 4.7 on IMDb? That's really
as
low.
I said at the start, like I enjoyed this in the way it was meant to be enjoyed, which I can't say for many films that we watch.
Particularly not the Infinity
The one
Project.
that comes up honestly is Project Gutenberg. Like I enjoyed, and I wasn't laughing at anything ridiculous about it. Like I'm sure there's other, like Blair Witch as well, but I'd seen that before, so it's hard to.
Yeah, but like it's most stuff we watch, we don't really know anything beforehand.
No. And actually, one time with Infinity, not to dwell on the past, but I was watching it and it had the time skip, the loops, which obviously we now know we're not part of the film.
Yeah.
But even the quality of it, Amy was watching a little bit of it and she was like, you really need to vet these films before. And I was like, that's kind of the point. Like,
yeah, no, no vetting.
No, like, we don't watch trailers at all. It's probably obvious already to you listeners, but yeah, we don't. The most we'll look at is a Google description.
Yeah,
and even then, sometimes the person who decides won't necessarily tell the other person what the Google description is.
I generally will know because I'll write down the IMDb score beforehand. But even then, that's down to other people's opinion. Like this has got a lower rating than the Infinity Project, and this was much better than the Infinity Project.
It's about numbers, isn't it, more than anything?
Yeah.
Like obviously because it's a number rating, but the amount of people who have rated it, what they're expecting, blah blah. So, they're going to talk to the hillbillies, aren't they?
Yeah, they go and meet Michael Jones's, who turns out is a shit interview because they're like, so you've seen Bigfoot? Yes, sir.
They've all got their mouth like half, like all these people are like, and like as if they're doing chewing tobacco.
Yeah,
that kind
everything he asks him, he's like, "Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir."
And he's like, "How would you describe Bigfoot?
Big.
And he's like, "Oh, whereabouts did you see him? Over there somewhere," and just points at like the woods.
And the main thing, we'll go through some of them because you've got some notes, Liz, but the main thing they find out from Michael Jones is that Willie Ray, the other guy who saw Bigfoot with him, is the guy to talk to,
and didn't want to talk to the news.
Didn't want to talk to the news, and isn't around for them to talk to.
Yeah,
but they get a little bit. That's kind of the main lead. But then there's another guy that runs up to the car, doesn't he? When they're about to leave.
So that's
Jones's. Is that the end?
Oh yeah, no. Before they're like, that's a really bad. And at that point, they get in the car. They're like, "Oh, that's a terrible interview. Would it be better if we just look for Bigfoot?"
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, "Oh yeah, maybe we should do that." And then this guy is just there at the window, looking really creepy.
And he's like a more creepy kind of hillbilly guy.
Yeah.
And this is like, what was it? We were talking about it a couple of times ago.
Yeah, is it The Hills of Eyes?
No, well that, but I was thinking more the like banjo one. Ding, ding, ding,
yeah,
ding,
I know what you mean.
Which we talked about, and I think it's a Robert De Niro. A Deer Hunter? No.
No.
That
was it. The redneck like horror film.
Yeah. There's been a few, but
the one with the banjo theme tune that you mentioned, yeah. It's weird that you remembered it the other week, but
Deliverance.
Right. Yeah, but anyway, this creepy guy, he's like, I've seen Bigfoot.
Yes.
So they interview him, his name's Earl. And he basically said, like, you only see Bigfoot if he wants to be seen.
That's it, yeah.
And he's like, I've seen him once. And he again mentions Willie Ray.
Yes. He's also kind of threatening in that way that the person at the start of a horror film is. And it's in Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
They call him the Harbinger, and he's like a pivotal role in it because they have to be warned and they have to deliberately ignore the warnings, and it's kind of plays as that, and thankfully doesn't come up again, does it? Apart from he kind of follows them a little bit.
But he also mentions Willie Ray likes to play games and go dancing with Bigfoot. And it's kind of the first reference of like, wait, what the fuck? Like,
he says he plays games with Willie Rays, dances, Indian wrestles, etc.
And it's just like really normal that Bigfoot is like just this guy.
Yeah, and we're now finding that out, and we're like,
I was thinking at this point, I was like, is there just going to be some guy?
I just thought it was going to be
Bigfoot?
like a big hairy guy.
Yeah. But he describes Bigfoot as 8 foot tall, strong, and really, really hairy.
Much more information than we've got so far. Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, thank you, El. And he's like, be safe. wouldn't want anything bad to happen. And they're like, why did he say that? And then they walk up and he's like following them.
He just like walks with them and then they're talking about him and they're like, huh.
Yeah. So they like run off and then they get in the car and they basically say like, we've got 5 days to go do this. Yeah. Let's go find like...
They do the Blair Witch, the locals bit, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they go around, and you've got more information here. Yeah, so I've got one funny bit with the lady that I'd like to mention at some point. But other than that, you tell me what you've got.
Yeah, so it kind of skips through like a few different people interviewing. The first guy's Walter Lee, who's like, oh yeah, he's the big hairy guy on TV. He's this guy in Bigfoot, and they're like, because they asked him, have you seen him? He's like, yeah, he's the big hairy guy on TV.
Well, I think he says a load of stuff and then he says about it being on TV. And they're like, oh, right. So because they're basically all dumb as shit is the way they're prepared.
Like, and then you get a guy called Reggie. You get a guy who's credited as, they ask him his name and he's like, it's on my vest. And he looks in, you can't see anything. So like the name thing at the bottom just says, name's on his vest. And I was like, I like that. And he's like, it's all bullshit. Yeah. Like, I don't believe this for a second.
There's like a couple of them there's one guy that's just rambling.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, it's done. He's like, I'm talking about Bigfoot. And it's like, you don't know. Like, he's a bit like a, crazy guy, I guess.
And we also get Trisha.
Is this the one?
The woman with like the baby crying.
Yeah, there's a baby crying. And they're like, are your children okay? And she's like, yeah, I fed them. And there's a bit here where, I think it's a little bit later with her, but Steve's like, rumor is Bigfoot smells like a wet dog. Have you ever experienced that? And there's like a pause, and then she's like, yeah, there's wet dogs around here. They smell like wet dogs. I had to I had to go back and watch that because I was like, that was funny. Because she's got such a deadpan delivery, and it's just like, okay.
And then there's another guy in the interview who comes up and just question marks below him, and they're like, they ask him, he's like,
that was the guy I was thinking of. And then there's like the buff guy, and then Moose is like, he's like drinking from a brown paper bag.
This is Junior.
Yes,
and he's like, I've not seen him, but I've heard him. And Moose is like, what noise does he make? And he's like, oh, he's like, that's a wolf. And it kind of cuts, but it goes back to him. He's like, oh, he's a bit like, grrr, grrr. And he's like, that's a bear. And then he's like a meow. And he's like, that's a cat.
And then does he go like, you haven't heard him, have you? And he's like, no.
And like Sweeks is like drinking like a brown paper bag like they have in America.
Brown bag and
we go back to the guy who's just the vest, and he's like, there's no scientific. He's the guy who like doesn't believe.
Oh yeah, and he's like,
and Steve's like, there's no science that proves he doesn't exist. And this guy's like, there's no science to prove he does exist.
And he's like, I bet you believe in everything, don't you? And he's like, I don't believe in everything. And he's like, do you believe in Loch Ness Monster? And Steve's like, yeah,
yeah.
And then they go to. We see them going to a house.
There's a couple more jokes with them.
Oh yeah. Any other ones worth mentioning?
No, they meet Cyrus, who says like, go talk to Willie Ray.
Oh yeah, so this is the second we've heard about him,
and he like offers to help.
Oh yeah, and then they're like, are you a filmmaker? He's like, no. And we're just like, okay. And they're driving up to this house, and Moose is joking that it's like Jeffrey Dahmer's house, or who's the one who wore the fake casts?
I don't know.
The famous one.
Ted Bundy?
Ted Bundy, yeah. And it turns out it's Willie Ray's house.
Yeah, as we're on their way there, Steve's like, stop. And he jumps out the car and he thinks he's seen Bigfoot, but nobody else saw, and he's kind of got his binoculars, and like he really wants to believe.
Yes.
But they're like, are you sure? And he's like, not really.
Yeah, and it's that's kind of the first indication of his kind of obsession, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
And he so kind of goes. And
they're going to get to Willie Ray's house and knock on the door, and he kind of it's like one of those American doors where they've got the door and then also the screen.
Yeah,
and he's standing at the other side of the screen,
silhouetted from behind.
And he's like, "What the hell do you want?"
And he's like, he says, "State your business."
Yeah, and they're like, they explain the documentary. And Willie Ray is played by Chris Farley's brother. Kevin P. Farley.
Yeah.
And he's like, leave. And then they're like, okay. He's like, oh, just kidding. And turns out to be like this like funny kind of.
He's like a kind of goofy guy. He's very batshit. Like he'll like stop halfway through and do a weird face, and he's very overacting. But I was very much there for it.
It's kind of like
it was
purposefully over the top, like
like
cabin in the woods hick
kooky kind of guy.
Yeah,
and he invites them in. Oh yeah, and Mickey's like, oh, I shit myself because he was scared of him, and he's like, don't worry, I got some more pants for you. And he comes out and he's got these funky pants on, like trousers with like patchwork. Is it like purple and gold or something?
Got like really like low middle bit, like
almost like Aladdin, like MC Hammer pants kind of thing.
They ask him about Bigfoot. He's like, yeah, I know Bigfoot. He lives 2 miles west of here. If you he's like, bastard owes me $20.
He keeps going on about it, which is
and they're like,
funny.
what? And like, he agrees to like be interviewed. But he's like, I'm gonna go make dinner. Do you want some? And they're like,
yeah.
Guess.
He's like, I made enough for everyone. And we don't find out what it is yet. But
no.
There's a funny bit. One of the first things they ask him is about the smell of the wet dog smell. Yeah. And he's like, it smells like, and he's like, passion fruit.
Yeah.
And they're like, he smells like passion fruit. And he's like, what? No, I just said that. And then he's like, but he smells like passion fruit. It's like, okay. It's like very, very like over the top. But in quite a funny way.
Yeah, it's that interview, and they're like, they say to him like, so you mentioned the Bigfoot owes you $20, and he's like, yeah, but like he's gonna pay, like he's a good guy.
Like, I don't want it on record that he doesn't pay his bills. Like, he's a nice guy.
And they're like, how did he come to owe you $20? They're like, he likes board games and sometimes puts some money in it, and we bet on the game Sorry, and I won $20. It's very. I very much enjoyed this bit of this character.
Funny. Yeah, and
they
find out that
he's like, Bigfoot comes around sometimes.
He's like, what's the date? And then he's like, and then he's like, Bigfoot's due today.
Yeah, he's like, hang around, Bigfoot's coming over tonight.
And then he goes out to check on the food, and
Moose
Jamie and Moose
crazy.
are like, no, we need to leave. And Mickey's like, he's a nice guy. Look at these awesome pants he gave me. And I think at this point, actually, we've been shown. Do we see the photo?
Yeah. So then this bit when Willie Ray comes back in.
Yeah.
And like Steve's convinced him to stay, and he's like, I've got pictures, and gets like this photo album out, and he's got a picture. It's quite hard to see, but
I didn't really see it.
It's basically Willie Ray and Bigfoot getting into like a kayak and doing like whitewater rafting.
They say like later when they're debating it, they're like, Bigfoot doesn't go whitewater rafting.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
and like the pictures, like Willie Ray in this kayak and Bigfoot like standing next to him, like posing for the picture.
When they all react to it initially, Mickey, I think, is like, oh, who took the photo? As if that's like the most mysterious thing about it. Which is very funny.
Yeah, like Moose and Jamie think that he's crazy, but Steve and Mickey kind of want to believe.
That's it. And it turns out, because Jamie kind of says like, oh, I don't want to have, what'd she say? Raccoon stew. And then he comes in, and then it turns out it's the awkward thing where he's standing
right there.
And he's like, and actually, Missy, it's actually squirrel stew.
Yeah. And it cuts to them eating it, and they're like, actually, it's not bad. Then there's like a bit of a montage of them waiting for Bigfoot, and Bigfoot doesn't turn up.
And it turns out he kind of says, Willie Ray, that maybe he got the date wrong.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, wait, he'll come back. And they're all like, we need to leave for the night, kind of thing.
Yeah, so they leave.
Do they go stay in their hotel again?
Yes, it's day 3.
Because they're still vaguely on
They're kind of like outside the car, like packing stuff up, and Jamie's like, I've got to go back to work. And Steve's like, don't worry, I called up your work. You've got 3 weeks off.
It's like, how did that happen?
Part of me, like, I thought it was going to be revealed that Steve got her fired.
Yeah. Oh. But yeah, he eventually says, doesn't he, $1,000.
Yeah, because Moose doesn't believe, so he's trying to convince Moose to stay, and he's like, Steve says, I'll give you each $1,000 if you stay and genuinely try over the next 2 weeks. And if we fail, I'll give you each $1,000. And Jamie's like, you don't have that.
And he's like, I do, it's my savings. And it's like, we never really find out about that, do we? But I think it's him, he's being desperate. He very much believes that they will see Bigfoot. So he doesn't feel that he has to ever put it on the line.
And then we get another Blair Witch kind of reference, and they're going around the shop getting supplies.
Well, no, before that, they lost the map.
Was it? No.
Oh, no, they do that.
They go around getting supplies,
They go around, and they talk to the shopkeeper, the clerk guy, and they're like, oh, we're going to find Bigfoot, and he's like, you're all going to die.
Yeah.
It's very to the point.
Yeah, and then they start walking into the woods, and they're like...
Moose keeps trying to buy rifles, and Steve's like, no.
Yeah, and Mickey buys like a shit ton of gummy bears.
Yes, yeah, which I think is the only thing that he pretty much eats, apart from the egg.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to.
As soon as they're in the woods, they're like, they've lost the map.
Yeah.
Like, where's
and
the
it's
map?
like, you lost the map? I thought you had it. And that was the first thing that really twigged for me as being Blair Witch.
And Steve literally shouts at them like, how could you lose the map?
I thought it was going to be a whole thing. But then they just cut back to them in a shop and they come out with another map.
Steve also is like, I've mapped out, written so much on this map,
He
like the
did
best
loads of
routes.
stuff. I literally have written, in caps, he lost the map. LOL, Blair Witch. Because I kind of twigged then. I was like,
and then we get like a shot of like Mickey running out the shop with the new map.
Do we get the bit about the camera now as well? Because he's like, almost straight up like my next note is about them losing the camera.
Oh yeah, so they
there's a bit in between, I think.
Yeah, they walk through. Steve says that Bigfoot's shit has like a red tint to it, so look out for that. And then there's the shot. So there's like the camera shot is like behind a tree.
As if someone's like propped it up just like partly behind a tree.
And you see them like say 20 yards ahead and they're having an argument. He's like, and now you've lost the camera? How have you lost the camera?
And then he walks over and he's like, oh wait, here it is, guys. I found the camera. It's so silly, but I
really like the fact that we were seeing it from the lost camera's point of view.
Yeah. And there's a couple other bits. We'll get to it very shortly. But we see, so when they set up camp, they'll set up a camera filming the camp as they do in found footage films.
Yeah.
And then you'll see Steve in the middle of the camp doing his weird like selfie like vlogs. And we'll see it from the wide camera and he's just like leant back with the camera in his face.
Yeah.
And like a couple of them. It's very like, it's like meta for this, but like in like quite a subtle way. Like it's not overly like they're not commenting as if they know what a found footage film is. It's for us rather than them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, I think Ricardo Herrera, who wrote and directed this, is clearly a big fan of Blair Witch.
Yes.
And has seen it multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah, then they're setting up the tent for the night.
Yeah.
And Jamie's kind of like showing them how to put up a tent.
There's a bit where they're designating and Moose gets designated to do it. And he's like, yeah, of course I can. And then it cuts to just Jamie literally showing them how to put one pole together.
Yeah.
She's like, see, it goes in like this. And they're like, oh.
Yeah. And like she does that and it's like, okay, so I've done that. You guys can do yours.
Yeah.
And Steve was like, what do you mean yours? Like the other tent is like, there's only one tent.
He's like, it said it would fit 4 men. And it's like, everyone knows that that's not how tents work.
Yeah.
We've done enough festivals, Lewis.
Yeah. Like, if there's 4 of you need at least a 6-person tent.
You need at least a space. And then if you've got bags, 2.
Yeah.
Like, you know, routine. You'd have a 2-man tent, wouldn't you, when we've gone places before.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so they kind of chatting.
Oh no, there's a bit.
Yeah, they're chatting in the tent, and like Moose is talking about how like they're talking about what they do with their $1,000.
Right. Okay.
And Moose said he'd start a production company, and it jumps back to Blood Brothers, and then that's the bit where they go hide in the kids' house.
Oh, is that the bit in the house? Yeah.
And it's like, I like this callback. Unfortunately, we don't see Blood Brothers again.
No, I think that's the 2 times, isn't it? Unfortunately, but
yeah.
Is this the shot with the map where they're like, "Why are you not taking care of?" They pan across and there's a map just hanging from a branch.
Yeah,
and it's just like it's just draped over. And then Steve's like, "Why are we not taking care of our map?"
Yeah,
it was like the second joke for that. It's very funny.
And we get like the next evening. It kind of jumps forward. I assume they've just been walking.
I've not got massive notes from here on.
But it's got Moose and Mickey talking about like that they have a chance with Jamie. And being like,
she's reading like by the fire,
And Moose goes over and just like she's like, piss off Moose.
Immediately, she just shoots him down.
And then, like, Mickey goes over there and starts talking about, like, a rabid bear. And she's like, pissed off. He's like, do you want to share my sleeping bag? And she's no.
Yeah, and from here on out, there's pretty much for the rest of it, they're just constantly harassing her, those two, aren't they? Mickey and Moose. Not even past the point where they potentially, well, they shouldn't have been anyway, but they should have got the hint.
Yeah, but they're clearly two really socially awkward guys.
Mickey really reminded me of Charlie from Always Sunny, like that kind of naivety,
right?
And like very strange, not as strange as Charlie from Always Sunny, but that kind of.
Always Sunny is now the longest ever running American sitcom.
I saw that, which seems really unbelievable.
It's been going 15 years.
Yeah,
which is mental.
It is true. Yeah, strange. And also, I think we mentioned it last week. #1 podcast.
Yeah,
at least at the time
for now until the project,
which is just the boys minus Danny DeVito.
Right.
So it's not D or Danny DeVito.
Yeah. So yeah, then it goes to day 4 and Jamie's cooking breakfast. and turns out Mickey and Moose didn't bring any food with them.
Yep.
And like she's like, do you want some? And Mickey like puts his hands out.
He's like, I'll have an egg.
And she like picks up like an egg with a spatula and
like
she puts it on his hand.
And he just goes back into the tent.
Yeah, and Moose is like, I'll have some bacon, and takes a bite. He's like, oh, is this turkey bacon?
Yeah.
She's like, yes. He's like, oh, and throws it back in the pan because he's got loads of food.
Yeah.
And there's another bit of Moose hitting on Jamie, and she tells him to go kill himself.
Yes, and then he says like, after we have sex or whatever, and she's like, no.
And then to like cool things off, they're like, should we like have some beers? And they're like, yeah, let's get some beers. And they check the bag, and they're like, oh, we forgot to pack the beers.
I missed that bit.
Yeah, there's a few like bits of them just like walking around.
Yeah.
Mickey thinks he sees some movement on camera, but it's so far in the distance you don't really know what it is. We get to day 5 and Steve like smells something as they're walking. He's like, do you know what that is? And Mickey's like, oh, I can smell that too. And he's like, Mickey, what'd you smell? And he's like, pizza, pepperoni pizza. And then Moose comes up and like sniffs his beard. He's like, you got pepperoni pizzas in your beard. And he's just like, oh, I had pizza like a week ago. Day 8, they're still walking.
Yeah.
Day 10.
I've got day 10. Yeah, this is my next day.
Yeah, that's when like they've got the 4 of them standing on top of like the ridge.
Yeah,
with the camera shot of them.
It's the shot. If anyone watches the trailer, it's one of the first shots you see in that.
Yeah,
and immediately Jamie's like, someone's touching her ass or something.
Moose, she's like, don't touch me, Moose.
And it's like Jamie's being harassed again, and they're all trying to be like the main person.
Like, and Mickey particularly is doing those like different poses doing, like, and starts like copying Steve, whatever Steve's doing. They basically like they've had no evidence so far. They've had some odd smells and sounds.
So they've basically got 4 or 5 days left.
Yeah, and they've covered 5 square miles.
Yeah,
in 10 days,
which isn't that much, really.
No,
I guess it's forest, but like,
yeah, and they're probably like walking like back and forth
a little bit,
not just like in a straight line.
They're in the area that they know it to be, aren't they?
Yeah,
and then we got is this the bit in the night time?
Yeah, and they're like sitting around discussing love.
They're all bonding.
And Moose tells a story. And like,
how quickly did you realize?
Oh, not at all.
No. I think Amy was in here for that bit. She was like, "This is going to be like a monologue from a film, isn't it?"
Yeah. So
I was like, I don't really recognize it.
Moose says that like, oh, he was in love once, and like Jamie,
a girl on a school bus
encourages. Yeah. So he's like, oh yeah, I'll go on a school bus that I love, and he was like. And then, like, I went and played, like, college football, and she was there
joined the army.
Me. And I joined the army, but I'd write to her. And then after that, like, we didn't see each other, but then she got sick. So we got, like, engaged to get married. And then Mickey's like, that's Forrest Gump. You're telling the story of Forrest Gump.
And Jamie's like really pissed off.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, like, because she was kind of like,
she started to feel sympathy for Mercy.
And then she just turns the light off, and it's like, they're all sitting up in the middle of the tent. Like,
yeah.
And then is it that night when we hear the noises?
Yeah, Steve wakes everyone.
And this is very Blair Witch. Actually, this is the first shot we see in the trailer, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. and that he hears a noise.
It's very much, first few nights of Blair Witch.
Yeah.
Camera like getting picked up in the night and all that kind of thing.
It kind of sounds like a bear, and they're like, well, you kind of hear like, and Moose is like, that's not Bigfoot, it's just a bear. Then you hear, I am Bigfoot.
It's very funny.
Which I didn't catch when I watched it, but it's in the trailer.
Did you not? Because I caught it, and then because we then don't, although my notes are quite breezy from here on out, there's a good probably 20, 30 minutes after this before we see any other evidence of Bigfoot. And I thought, was it one of the guys going, I'm Bigfoot, like that? Because it made me really laugh at the time, and I thought, right, I like where this is going. Yeah. I thought they're going to go see Bigfoot immediately and like hang out with him for like half. I mean, to be fair, when they were with Willie Ray, I was thinking, is he going to turn up and it's just going to be like hanging out with Bigfoot? Yeah. But like, which would have been great as well. But
and they say Steve wants to like go out running, and they like pin him down, and
then like. There's a funny bit with Mickey, like, you don't think he can get in the tent, do you? And it's like, well, obviously, if he wants to get in the tent, like, it's so stupid.
Then we get to day 12, and Steve says, like, Bigfoot's taunting us.
Yeah.
And he's starting to lose the plot.
Steve is really losing
which, again, Blair Witch-esque of, like, someone going a bit crazy.
And similarly, there's a bit, the Moby Dick bit, have you got anything before that?
That's, a bit more. So, like, we get a funny bit like earlier when Steve was describing the conditions. Mickey has a go at it, and he doesn't know anything he's talking about. It just sounds like,
is that the bit where he's cut off on the camera?
No, this is like Moose filming him. Moose is like, that's just nonsense.
It's about like humidity and stuff like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and then we find a footprint, and Steve gets really excited about it.
Yeah,
and Moose is like, why do we ever only find one footprint?
And it's like, he's playing with us like it's a game.
Yeah.
And Jamie's getting worried, like visibly worried about Steve.
And Mickey, over like a campfire one night, starts roasting some gummy bears because that's all he eats.
Yeah.
And then we get the bit with Moby Dick.
Yeah. So basically, Jamie comes up to Mickey, and this is where I thought it was really like Charlie from Always Sunny.
Yeah.
Because of like just being so clueless about stuff. Because she says, "Oh, you know about Moby Dick?" And he's like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
And he's like laughing, and then he says it sounds like a gay comic book hero.
Yeah.
Like Captain Dick or something.
This is part of Jamie being concerned because it's like Steve's white whale.
Yeah, exactly. Which we don't get the explanation of. It's
because
more just like
Mickey's like, oh,
and then she's like genuinely like, she's like,
she turns around to the camera and she's like, I'm surrounded by idiots and assholes.
Yeah, and then doesn't Moose go, that would be a good name for a band?
Yeah.
And they joke about that later. And then we get another gummy bear situation, don't we, here?
Yeah, and Moose and Mickey hit on Jamie again. This is like the next day.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And she gets really pissed and just kind of breaks. She's like, guys, I'm gay. Like, I'm a lesbian. Like,
yeah.
I'm not interested at all. And like, storms off. And Mickey Moose turn at each other and go, challenge accepted.
It's very like Barney from Always Sunny, isn't it? But like, in like a clueless way.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, there's no way, like, kind of thing. And it's like,
yeah.
It's not. They're not great people, are they? To be honest, it's
yeah,
it's quite funny, but
they're kind of clueless idiots, and it's more like an ignorance than an actual like.
And this is what I'm thinking with the Always Sunny kind of thing. Like it's that kind of like. It's 2017. I think hopefully. I don't think it's like the person who made it isn't thinking that. It's. Do you know what I mean? Like they're taking the piss out of people who would think that.
Taking the piss out of those kind of people, yeah.
Yeah.
So we get the day 13 and they say there's 4 days left.
Right, okay.
And that's where you get Mickey decides to film his own bit, sets up the camera, and he's talking into it, but the camera's like cut off his head.
Because he says, Jamie, can you like frame this for me or whatever? And she's like, no, you do it yourself, but I think she's watching. And then afterwards, and he keeps saying like, is this the face of a man who would who would give up? And we just can't see above his chest.
Yeah.
It's very funny. And then he's like, how was that? And she's like, yeah, perfect.
Yeah. And then he goes back and goes in his bag and can't find his gummy bears. Yeah. And Moose walks back out the woods and he's just finishing off a bag of gummy bears. And Mickey is like, super pissed, like extremely
like
angry.
takes it really personally. And this is very Blair Witch as well, isn't it? It's kind of like turning on each other.
But this time it's about gummy bears.
But it also kind of, like it's not, I mean, it's irrational, but it gets resolved. Like it's more of like a buddy comedy.
They're not actually going crazy like in Blair Witch.
It's more like in a buddy comedy film. There's a point where, think Pineapple Express or something. They'll have a moment where it's the crisis of their friendship kind of thing. And this is kind of that for this film.
So we get to like nighttime and like Mickey's like, he said he's going to sleep outside because he doesn't want to share a tent with Moose. Yeah, and Moose is like, no, I'll stay outside.
And he's like fully zipped up in his sleeping bag, and there's some kind of physical comedy.
He's trying to get out.
He's trying to get out, and he's
like, Moose, stop touching me.
And he's trying to like fight him.
Falls over a couple of times.
Yeah, and then Moose ends up sleeping outside. Oh no,
Moose,
a bit before that, there's
Moose
harassing
and
Jamie, isn't there?
Moose and Jamie like want to go home. Yeah. But like Steve's like really enjoying himself and wants to just carry on going because he's getting like obsessed.
Yes.
And Moose,
is this when he's running around with the camera, or is that another
That's
bit?
A bit late. And Moose is like, I want to go home. I had a Capri Sun for lunch. I'm so hungry. And Steve was like, no, we're so close. Like Bigfoot is over there somewhere. And they're like, you sound like Michael Jones is.
Yeah, because then they all like look over and they're like, where? And he's like, I don't know, like over there somewhere.
Over there somewheres. The Moose realizes that he actually is sleeping outside. So he lays down, he's trying to make them jealous. He's like, oh my God, there's a night rainbow. Guys, come look.
And then we see like through the mesh, like Steve pop his head up and be like, shut up, we're trying to go to sleep. And then it skips ahead and he's just been talking about Blood Brothers sequels. And what is it, them finding Atlantis?
He's going to get Bruce Willis cast as the president of Atlantis. And also Jeff Goldblum as his Secretary of State, who turns out to be the villain.
And then they're just like, shut up, go to sleep.
And then it cuts next. It's day 15.
Oh, because they hear, so before they hear noises in the distance, like breaking of branches, like Blair Witch.
Yeah.
And then Jamie's like, I'm going to bed, and they all rush inside, and then they zip Moose outside because he said he was going to stay out.
Yeah.
And then we get all that, and we keep skipping. And I was kind of thinking something was going to happen, but nothing happens.
Yeah, this is the bit that slightly drags for me.
Yeah.
And it gets day 15 and Jamie says like, oh, it's been quiet the last couple of days. We've just been like walking. She's like, Mickey and Moose aren't talking to each other. Steve's gone a bit psycho.
Yeah.
And she's in the tent. She's like, to be honest, don't tell Steve this, but I think I saw something.
That's it.
But at this point, she like wants to go home. So she's like, if I say that, Steve will lose it.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And then we get a bit of a crisis, kind of a climax for Steve. Or have you got a bit before that?
No, before that, it's more like the Mickey and Moose, and like Moose asks like Steve, like, am I an arsehole? And kind of explains to him that like Mickey really loves gummy bears. He tells a story about when his like bike was stolen as a kid. He's like, that's how much Mickey loves gummy bears.
Yeah. And it turns out that Moose had that exact thing happen to him. A guy called Mark Jacobson stole his bike.
Moose apologizes and they become like best friends again.
And he's like, I don't want to be a Mark Jacobson to you.
And he's like, when we get back, I'm going to buy you as many gummy bear packets as you want. He's like, 5. He's like, I'll buy you 5. He's like, 10. He's like, I'll buy you 10.
He's like, what's your
47?
He's like, what's your favorite number? And he's like, 47.
Like, I'm not going to buy you 47.
And he's like, don't worry, with the £1,000, you'll have enough money to open your own gummy bear factory.
And then this is when
Steve, not pounds, obviously.
Steve loses it a bit. And starts like howling.
Yeah, he's doing like Native American dances by the fire. Is it that bit?
I think
that's at night.
Oh, that's a bit after this. Like,
oh, is this when he's running around with the camera?
Yeah. And he's like,
it's very
howling,
funny.
and he's like, right, guys, we've got to set up. I want like a camera up there with a 360 thing, motion sensors around. And Jamie's just like, we don't have that equipment. Like, what are you talking about?
She puts it up and she's like, yeah, there's your motion sensor. It's just a camera station. Right?
And like, Steve is like a mess at this point.
Yeah.
And then he starts that they go to bed and he's doing like Native American dancing
he's
around
got
the fire.
A bandana on his head, and he's kind of like doing like
and it's almost like stereotypical, almost maybe offensive Native American dancing.
Think potentially, yeah.
And
then he calls out to them, doesn't he?
They like going to bed. They're just going to sleep, and he's like, "Guys, I found Bigfoot. I found Bigfoot." And they go rushing out, and he's like, "Look, he's there!" And points to the floor. There's a turtle on the ground.
Well, tortoise. They call it a turtle. But Americans.
And he's like, "Look, there."
Don't know the difference.
And they're like, "What?" And they're like, "It's Bigfoot." And like one by one, they're like,
they all go back, apart from Jamie, who's filming him. And then this is like a kind of like genuinely sad moment.
Yeah, because like,
and I wasn't really sure where it was gonna go.
Jamie was like Steve genuinely thinks it's Bigfoot. I thought he was joking, but
no.
And Jamie's like, he's like, "Jamie, do you believe?" And Jamie's like, "I'm so sorry."
She's like, "You just got a bit overexcited."
And
Steve,
She's
being really nice.
Steve kind of realised, and he just looks so sad.
He looks so. He's got like it's a lot of. It's kind of like the Blair Witch moment of talking to the camera.
Yeah,
but he's having this realization in real time. It's actually quite a good performance from him.
Yeah,
he's got like the red eyes. He's like almost crying,
and he's come to like the realization that he's having a breakdown.
That he's just been like really erratic.
And then that ends with him picking up the turtle and like drop kicking it.
Yeah, he's just pissed off. Well, he hasn't finished his breakdown, has he? Because the last day, is it?
Yeah, we're on the last day, and Moose is like convinced that Bigfoot is a hoax at this point.
He's very
They've
done
been
with
out for 2 weeks, like walking through the woods, which is longer than Blair Witch.
Much longer. Well, from what we could tell anyway. I think they're probably about a week and a bit, Blair Witch.
We did count the days. I think it was like 7 or 8.
7 or 8, yeah. And the thing is with this as well, like, it's obviously a comedy, but I don't think they've really brought the right amount of stuff. Like,
no, they didn't bring food.
They didn't bring food. I mean, they must have eaten. I think at one point Mickey says, "Oh, we haven't really had a meal for a couple of days."
Yeah.
But anyway, it's not really the point.
And Jamie's like comforting Steve because it's come to an end.
Yeah, he's walking at the back of the group, isn't he?
And then
we see from his perspective, he just stops.
He just stops and sits down. He's like, "I'm staying." Like, I'm staying. And he like pass over the camera. Like, at this point, he doesn't even care about the documentary. Like, he's like, "I'm staying." And Moose is like, "Okay."
And walks off. And the rest of them, Mickey and Jamie, are trying to be like, "This is ridiculous. Like, what are you just going to sit here and just wait? Like, you're going to die, basically."
And then Mickey sees some movement like behind some rocks. And he's like, "Wait, what's that?"
There's like some hair kind of moving in just above.
And they run over and Sam, how would you describe what's going on behind these rocks?
So there's 2 Bigfoots.
2 Bigfoots. Right there.
One that's a male Bigfoot. And one which I think is a female Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's not clear, but I presume so.
I think kind of looks a bit more feminine from what I remember.
Right.
And one is they're both facing the same direction.
Yeah, they are.
And they are mating vigorously and loudly.
One is like leaning over, and the other one
they're going at it from behind. Is what's going on.
Basically, there's 2.
Oh, because we hear I think they hear the noise before they see anything. Yeah.
Basically, like there's 2 Bigfoots having like
I think
vigorous sex.
We missed not to move away at the worst moment. The smell of passion fruit is mentioned a couple of times. We skipped over. So they say, I think, after the pizza smell, Pizzagate, which is
the real Pizzagate.
After Pizzagate, there's a couple of nights later, there's a bit where they smell it and they're like, "Oh, that must be it," kind of thing. And then they don't see anything.
There's also a couple where I think it smells something and Mickey's like farted.
Yeah. Anyway, so they walk closer and they see this happening,
and then the male Bigfoot like runs over and grabs Steve.
Steve's like facing the other way, like, "Guys, we found him," and then he like grabs him by like the head, I think,
and he's basically like crushing his head between his 2 hands.
And Steve's like kind of fine with it and just like, "It's fine."
This bit really got me. Mickey just appears behind with like a plastic chair that you get in wrestling and just whacks Bigfoot over the back.
And it just like breaks off on his back, doesn't it?
And then like Jamie's like, where did you get a chair from?
It's so silly. Because okay, so at this point, Moose is off somewhere, and we see from his point of view him rushing back when he hears noises.
Yeah.
So I thought he'd come back with a chair. But it's even more funny that it's Mickey. Mickey just turns up like wrestling chair.
Got a chair, and it does like fuck all.
It's so that's
and then like
good.
Moose like jumps to the ground with a gun.
It's almost like a Point Break kind of thing, isn't it? Like he's on the floor
and he goes yippee ki yay and shoots.
I mean, he closes his eyes while he's shooting, doesn't it?
And then it just cuts to Steve laying on the floor holding his leg,
and the Bigfoot like runs off camera.
Yeah, and he's like, you just shot me. And then like they're all quite happy they've seen Bigfoot, so they're all like carrying Steve back to the car and like quite struggling. And then Willie Ray just like turns up and he's like,
oh, you found Bigfoot then?
And they're like, he's been like, yeah, he's having sex, he tucked me, and he's like, yeah, it's mating Friday. Like,
does he say something like, "Oh, he can't tie him down," like, or something like that? Like, he says something about him not having a wife. But
and then Steve like, Willie Ray, and he puts them in his hand, and it's a $20
like a
note,
crumbled out $20 bill.
And he's like, Bigfoot told me to give this to you.
He's like, there's something about it.
Oh god. Oh, it's so funny.
And I think Willie Ray says something like, "See, I told you he'd be good for it."
Oh, and then it's like credits.
That's pretty much the end of the film.
And then like there's a credit song.
Which what did this remind you of?
Tenacious D. It's Tenacious D.
Very
It's not
Tenacious
Tenacious
D.
D, but it's got.
I think
it's by a guy called Joe Menente.
Right. Okay. I thought it might be Moose because he's a bit Jack Blacky, but yeah,
You know, he's Nick Armstrong. But it's basically Bigfoot sex is the best.
Very funny.
I had it like stuck in my head all night, like the other night when I watched this. Bigfoot sex is the best.
I wonder if that's available online because I was thinking that would be a good clip for the.
Yeah, I'll have a quick old check on the YouTubes. I think it's called Bigfoot Sex. Maybe Bigfoot Sex is the best.
Yeah. But either way, it's a funny bit.
Yeah, and yeah, I was immediately like, this is very Tenacious D.
Yeah, and it's kind of vaguely animated credits, and it's showing like, you know, production, you know, like tapes with the labels on it and stuff like that. And it, you know, I think the song plays through, and then it's a short song, probably like 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's not got a video, but it has got the 2-minute song. Oh no, I'm not going to play it through here because the quality will be terrible. But
there's a little tease there for you.
I will. I'll send you the link to the song.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And we can put that as the second.
Yeah. So good on you, Joe Menente.
But yeah, and then the credits are pretty short and breezy.
Yeah, there's not much.
And like I said, the only thing I noticed really was a lot of it was royalty-free music. Which
I noticed
to be fair,
that.
If we made that film, I think probably do the same.
Oh yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, overall, like considering I was going into it, saw the 4.7 IMDb, realized it was like a cheap found footage about Bigfoot.
Yeah,
I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was way better than I thought it was going to be, and it was genuinely funny.
It was
a lot of these kind of cheap stuff, like you can tell what they're going for, but they're not professional comedians, so it's not that funny.
But
this was genuinely funny. Like they really pulled it off.
I agree. I mean, I before we do any trivia, before we do any ratings. Do you want to do a bit of trivia?
Yeah, I haven't got anything.
No, okay, well,
Okay.
we won't be doing any then. The only trivia I had was about Chris Farley's brother.
Yeah, I was gonna look up some stuff about Bigfoot,
That's
but
all right.
that's like its whole other thing, isn't it?
Well,
Bigfoot.
just like yeah, you know what? I was going to do the same thing, to be honest, because there's another podcast, cryptozoology podcast. that I listen
like
to.
the people in that film we watched, the Dinosaur Project.
Dinosaur Project, the very first.
Wow, I don't know how I remembered that from like
the only
months ago.
I listened to an episode. Well, just not the mic there. I listened to an episode recently where they were talking about recent sightings, and they were looking at some videos and stuff. And one of them sounded more like a Slender Man thing. It was like a very tall person in the distance. Sounded quite creepy.
Right.
Which makes me think of the fact that you've mentioned a couple of times recently.
Really weirdly, because I wasn't even thinking about this when
No. Well, it's before we'd.
I saw I was on Reddit, just a silly like joke thread that was like, let's normalize 2D Bigfoot.
Have we talked about that on here before?
No, we talked about it in real life.
Because I feel like I've edited something and had to listen to you talk.
Okay.
so that sounds like an insult.
Yeah, it does. Well, if I haven't, I'll keep it brief.
Yeah.
Just the theory that Bigfoot's 2D.
Flat Bigfoot, I think.
Flat Bigfoot, yeah.
And he can turn to the side.
He turned to his side and you can't see him.
Very silly. I don't know when we would have talked about that then. Anyway.
I think out somewhere.
Out and about.
We do have
probably.
social lives, Sam.
Well, you actually testified on an episode not a month ago that we never talk outside of this. So
listeners, choose to believe what you want to
choose
believe. The
your
other
own
is
adventure.
satire. As we always say, the other part is satire.
I need to actually start tagging satire in it so that when we insult directors, like we came for that guy hard last episode.
I didn't realise till I listened to it
back. Yeah, and we forgot. We've still got another. Okay, we'll make sure we tag him in the next one because we've got another clip to put up this week.
Oh yeah, like, listeners, this is a bit out of line with
you. That will time it for you guys.
Yeah,
it's currently. No, I'm not going to.
Whereas this guy, Ricardo Herrera.
Oh no,
I can only say good things
we'll come
about.
For him in a, I was going to say we'll come for him in a good way, but that sounds like
that's wrong. But yeah, anyway. I might as well talk because like the way that it mirrors Blair Witch is very clever, but also being silly about it. Like
it's not
having things like
it's not like a scary movie where it's not clever jokes about something. You know, it's not like, oh, imagine this, but there's sex in it. Imagine if someone's naked or there's boobs or like Michael Jackson's there or whatever.
Yeah, it's more like, oh, we're gonna have the same tension between the group as we did in Blair Witch, but this time it's going to be over gummy bears.
Yes, exactly. And like you do, it is the main, other than Steve being a bit off the rails, like that's the main point of contention for the like third act of the film.
And like the third act, like as it was getting more into it, I was like, I really, really, really hope we see Bigfoot.
Yeah, because if we didn't, it wouldn't have paid off.
And then like, even though it's just Bigfoot sex, I was like, Joe, what? That's a really good way of doing it because it's just like
it's so stupid.
It's so stupid that it just kind of like tops it off.
I just said like, oh, Scary Movie does something but with sex, which is exactly what.
Yeah,
but it wasn't the crux of that joke. Almost like
like
him coming out and just like attacking. Because I think when he talks to Willie Ray, he's like, yeah, he does that sometimes. As if he's just been attacked by him as well.
The funny bits are like the hitting the chair. Moose shooting Steve in the leg and then the $20.
Yeah, like the sex thing is like, oh, this is a weird way for us to find Bigfoot. It's not like it's funny, but it's not the main. Yeah.
It's kind of like it kind of makes sense because that's when Bigfoot's got his guard down, sort of thing.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Now that I think about it, because if it was like a scary movie, it'd be like he'd carry on like fucking the other Bigfoot and be like giving him a thumbs up or something, or like smoking weed or something. Like, wee.
But also it kind of adds like when like it's kind of proved that Bigfoot is because everything else is like. Bigfoot probably did leave that footprint. Bigfoot probably was taunting them. Bigfoot probably did shout, "I'm Bigfoot."
I'm Bigfoot.
Like Bigfoot probably was having like a joke around. And because of what we know through Willie Ray, like Bigfoot's self-aware, intelligent creature, who plays board games and
like now we know that he dances an Indian wrestles.
All of that stuff was true.
Yeah, very silly.
Yeah,
I think we'll do some ratings, shall we? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I haven't really got anything else.
I haven't got anything else to say really. I mean, like I said at the very start, it was a thoroughly entertaining film. And the best thing I can say about it for the third time, it was that it was entertaining in the way it was meant to be entertaining. And that doesn't sound like much praise, but for our genre of film, our very specific genre, that is high praise.
Yeah, it was meant to be like a silly Blair Witch parody about Bigfoot. And it was everything you want from a silly Blair Witch parody about Bigfoot.
Absolutely. I completely agree there. Have you got a number in mind? I can go first if you want.
I'm kind of split between two.
Yeah.
I'm kind of
I don't
cautious.
want to be too generous. I feel
that's what I'm thinking.
I don't want to give an unknown number.
I've been talking back through this. I've enjoyed talking about this film so much. I think over the course of this episode, it's gone up.
You've gone up. Yeah.
Jill, fuck it. Like, it really made me laugh. And like,
fuck it.
And I don't think I've laughed as much in a single point in our history of recording the pod.
I was going to say ever. I was like, fucking hell, we're going to go 10 out of 10 here.
No, but like thinking back to a thing really made me laugh. So I'm gonna give it an 8.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna go 9 out of 10. I was gonna do 8 as well.
I can't go up to a 9 because
I feel like we need a seriously good film for it. This is what I mean.
I think
like
Gutenberg got a 9 from me.
Did it?
I think so.
We need someone who listens. We don't talk to you directly often. We obviously do.
If somebody wants to send us a list of all our ratings,
if someone would like to make that up, that would be amazing.
Ahead.
Like we need, you know what we need? I know that we've spoken before about how the Reddit is the one thing, unfortunately, that's fallen behind. I feel like we need a Redditor, because the Redditors are the kind of people, not to generalize, but do you know what I mean? The YouTubers, most of the comments we get are spam comments in Russian, to be perfectly honest. Occasionally it's some nice criticism. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, mixed bag. Reddit, I think, is anyway. If anyone is a Redditor,
is still not fixed. So when I get that fixed, I am gonna.
But if anyone who's on here is a Redditor, like, you know, an active Redditor, anyone listening, or even if you're not and you fancy just literally just skimming through and just doing some collation of what our scores would be, it'd be very much appreciated. More so than if either of us did it, I think. But yeah, it'd be nice to know, because we can kind of keep track. It's obviously fun not knowing.
And like,
but
it's massively inconsistent. Like, if we went back through, I'd probably look back and be like, well, that film was better than that, even though I gave it a high rating.
Yeah, and I vaguely
I think it's important to note that our ratings mean nothing.
Yeah, I mean, we almost had like a really abstract rating system, didn't we? I think there was discussion at the start about almost like an up-down kind of proj no kind of thing.
But I think this is simple, and like,
as you can probably tell, a lot of the structure of this podcast was just done on the fly of that first episode, and we've just stuck with it. If it wasn't clear, I've also gone with I have gone with an 8 out of 10. I can't remember if I actually said that.
Cool. So 8. So we've both given it, which is mad. So like last week, we both gave the Infinity Project a 2.
Yeah, or maybe I went 3.
Maybe
I think I went 3. You went 2. So it's the same. You're always going bloody. I know we're always one off normally, aren't we?
But that had a higher IMDb rating than this that we both given.
Which goes to show that most people on the internet are imbeciles.
Yes,
I'm doing that character where I'm just mean to people.
No, like everyone on the internet, apart from people who listen to the Project,
most
are
people
imbeciles.
You are the only exception.
You are the 1%.
Is that a Paramore song? Yeah, I think.
Yeah, the only exception is a Paramore
and that song is about you, listener. You, dear listener.
Dear listener.
You, dear listener.
Made you think about the dear sister.
You, dear sister. Speaking of Andy Samberg.
Yeah.
Imagine that look from that video. If you haven't seen
kind
it,
of the big,
Google
big
dear
curly
sister.
hair.
That plus.
It's a great sketch.
Oh, I was talking. Last tangent before we move on to personal projects. I was talking to somebody at work today about, do you remember Ras Trent, which is the Lonely Island SNL sketch of Andy Samberg with dreadlocks, and he's like a student in New York, and he's like doing like a reggae song about being like a white guy, and he's like, he's doing like patois, kind of like Jamaican accent. And the whole time he's saying really stereotypical things about like smoking bongs and like wearing like hemp shorts. And then like towards the end of the song, he's like singing in the street, and then he walks past like a load of like real rastas, like black guys with dreads and hats, and he just like starts singing really quietly while he's going past them, and then starts singing louder again. It's just like, it's classic Andy Samberg. Like, it's very funny, and he's really hitting the nail on the head with like,
when Andy Samberg was on SNL, he was definitely the best cast member.
Yeah, there's been some good
because like this, and like I Threw It on the Ground is a great song.
Yeah, to be honest, because Lonely Island was such a big thing at the time, it's they're quite interchangeable.
Yeah,
like the Natalie Portman rap, the first one especially, is very funny.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah, we'll wrap that up and we'll move on to
personal projects. We should say it in sync every week.
My legs just cramped up.
Oh, maybe not. That's what happens. So what? Well,
okay, I'm back.
Well, Sam's doing his stretches now. I guess I'll go first.
Okay, yeah, please.
So me and Christina finished watching Taskmaster. I won't go too much into it, but it did have like the tightest finish ever. Like, the top 4 was something like 4 points between them.
Yeah, I saw there was a
insane.
new lot announced for next year.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
I didn't read. Oh, what's the funny guy? Sorry,
the funny guy,
the non-Father Ted guy, the other guy, the silly one from Father Ted,
the short one.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name. Eamon Holmes.
No.
I'm quickly googling it, but anyway, yeah, Taskmaster was great.
Was it good.
Always. Season like 12 or something, which is like mad that it's been around that long.
That is quite crazy, to be honest.
So the next series,
Ardal O'Hannon. I've just remembered his name.
Well done.
I didn't Google it, but I am now. Just
this article that I'm.
Ardal O'Hannon. Is that right?
Oh, we're gonna see another Champions of Champions.
It is Ardal O'Hanlon. Maybe he's a champion of champions.
Don't think he is, but the actually champion of champions is gonna be Lisa Tarbot, Kerry Godliman, Lou Sanders, Ed Gamble, and Richard Herring.
Ooh,
they did do like after 5 seasons, they did a champion of champions.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was good. It was just like a one-off.
Just good to see some people. So like a real tight best of kind of thing. Yeah.
So yeah, Ardal O'Hanlon, Bridget Christie.
I looked at the people.
Actress and podcaster Sophie Duker. Oh! Podcasters can get on there. And sorry, Chris Ramsey and
who's
Judy
Chris Ramsey
Love.
Again?
I don't recognise any of those names.
I recognise Chris Ramsey's name, but
apart from the Father Ted guy.
Chris Ramsey, comedian. He is a comedian.
Oh, really?
He's on Celebrity Juice, apparently, which I have never really watched before. He looks very familiar, but he also just looks like a British white man who is between the ages of 25 and 35.
Oh, there's not many of them about.
The Guardian gave
Imagine
him...
being a British white man between 25 and 35. That would suck.
In 2014, his gig at the Milton Keynes stables was given 2 out of 5 by The Guardian. He also had a haircut like a singer from All Time Low, so maybe that was contributing to that.
All Time Low were in Christina's top 5 artists
I saw
of the
that,
year on Spotify.
We had
Spotify rap. It's been a lot of the talk this week.
It has been all the talk. I don't think we'll go into it much here, but it was
moving on. Yeah, my top songs were all England football songs on the Euros.
Oh yeah, they were. Which gives you an idea about
the other thing I was going to mention. I watched the first 2 episodes of Hawkeye because that came out.
I watched the first 3, so I win.
Oh, so you're 1 ahead of me.
But we can talk about the first 2 quickly.
First 2, first thoughts.
Yeah, I thought it was.
I really enjoyed it.
I think it's potentially one of the best ones they've done.
Yeah.
In a year, which this is the 5th Marvel show of a year, which sounds insane.
Yeah, but I'm thoroughly, and I kind of like the whole Hawkeye is kind of like,
yeah,
I'm a normal man that ended up in like a superhero team.
Because that's the thing.
He's wearing like hearing aids and he's old.
Like he is.
I like it.
compared to the comics where I think he was a like a low-level villain turned hero, in this he was a special forces guy for like 20 years, and it was only for the last 5 to 10 years that he had to do this
like
weird
Avengers
shit
stuff.
And like I think it might be in the third one, which you haven't watched yet, but they're talking about branding because Kate Bishop's, she's young.
Oh no, yeah, that's in the second one.
Oh, they mentioned it again in the third one because they're talking about costumes. And he's like, for the last 25 years, my job was to not be recognized.
Yeah.
It's very like...
Yeah, I like the bit where Kate Bishop's like, he mentioned his hearing. She's like, "Oh, how would you lose your hearing?" He's like, I don't know. It has like a quick like montage of all the times that he's.
It's like him falling through a window in Avengers, and like shit just blowing up in Endgame next to him. And it goes to show you, it's like he is just a normal guy.
Yeah. I really, really like the opening scene of her as a child, where you see like him like across like doing his stuff that happened in, and he
Avengers. Kind of inadvertently saved her. Yeah, which is why. At her dad's funeral, she's like, I need a bow and arrow.
Yeah. I like, also, I think the dad's going to come back because I recognise the actor.
Did you? Yeah. And
he was in Spotlight, which I mentioned a couple of weeks ago.
We didn't see the body. The stepdad, obviously a bad guy.
Who's in Better Call Saul.
Is he? Okay, never seen it.
He's quite good in that. He's quite like
do you know the comic villain that he is?
A little, not enough in detail to make me aware of where this character's arc's going to go.
I'm fairly sure he's the swordsman, which is pretty obvious from the fact he collects swords. Also, who's the guy who was the uncle who died? Like, he's a famous British actor, isn't he?
I don't think so.
Yeah, he is.
Mixed up with someone.
No, he is. Yeah.
Armando.
Yeah, Armand Duquesne.
I'm gonna quit. The other thing I was gonna, what was the other thing I was gonna mention? Oh, I really like how Kate Bishop is like really talented, but not like practiced in the superhero stuff.
Yes, there's some good stuff with that.
Like, it's really kind of well put together. I'm just scrolling through looking for.
I'm looking at it as well. Yeah, Simon Callow. Yeah, he's like a famous British actor.
Okay. I will. Oh yeah, Simon Callow, famous British actor.
Simon Callow was in Ace Ventura. Was in A Room with a View, A Choice in the Mid, 4 Weddings and a Funeral.
Oh,
he's like a proper James the Giant Peach, Outlander, Christmas Carol.
He got married for the first time 5 years ago.
Good for him.
At the age of 67.
Good for him.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far, and it's kind of nice that like
he was in Street Fighter 1994.
Similar with like the Black Widow film earlier this year. It's nice that like giving the lesser OG Avengers their time in the sun.
Yeah. He's in Notting Hill as himself, so
nice.
He must have been popular enough in 1999.
Yeah,
I think he's a Shakespearean actor, which kind of makes sense. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Third episode, very good. Won't spoil anything. Hawkeye gets a bit of time to Hawkeye, which is...
That's good.
You'll realise when you see it that it was kind of absent from the first ones, not in a bad way.
Yeah.
The LARPing bit, very funny, I thought.
Yeah.
From episode 2. I think episode 2. And he's just like... He's obviously much better than these people who do it for a hobby. It's just funny, and he's
just walking through, just like blocking everything,
just
and
like avoiding stuff, and very funny. And there's some interesting Thanos was right graffiti and stuff like that.
Yeah, because that's like a big thing on like Reddit of like.
Because
right.
we talked about it before.
Like,
and even Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the whole Flag Smashers, their ethos is partly based on that, isn't it?
Yeah, like no borders.
Things
stuff.
were better before. But yeah.
Cool.
Well, we'll catch up with that.
Yeah, we'll
potentially as we go, but we'll see how both of us are.
Yeah, I think the last episode comes out after we're doing our Christmas episode.
Yeah.
So
we haven't mentioned it much, but we'll do a Christmas break. We'll talk about it near the time.
We've got family other than our
we'll do
spend time with.
Yeah, sadly. We will release a little best of in that period. So you'll have something to tide you over. But we'll talk about it more, I think, in the Christmas episode.
We've got a few weeks till then. So
anything else that you want to talk about?
No. What have you been watching / reading / doing? I say the other stuff, it's going to be stuff we watch because...
It's funny that you say that because the theme that I've been working on for multiple months and has never been ready, lists all those things, which
wow.
is, I guess, just because that's how we describe it. But
Interesting.
The main thing that I saw
Yep.
in the cinema was Dune.
You saw Dune? You saw Dune?
I finally saw Dune.
And you didn't tell me.
No,
you were saving it for this.
I was saving it for this
Oh my God, we saw Dune.
Okay,
right.
Bear in mind, we're on an hour and a half now. Let's not
Okay.
let's not try and go over 2 hours here, shall we?
Yeah. What did you think of Dune?
I thought it was good. Yeah, like I had read about 2 chapters of the book.
And that went in the first 5 minutes.
Well, one of which is pushed a little bit further in. It's the Gom Jabbar when he's got his hand in the box and the needle in his neck.
Right.
So that is one of the first scenes you see in the you read in the book.
Okay.
I thought it was good. Yeah, I thought it visually very good.
Yeah.
Can't really fault visually. Story wise, as you mentioned, a month ago now, it does feel like the first part of something.
Yeah.
And I think talking about it afterwards with Amy, who has read the whole book, I think it's one of those ones, if the second part is nailed, it will feel almost a greater thing in hindsight.
Yes.
And it's a bit like, I've always really loved the Fellowship of the Ring, but at the same time,
the Fellowship of the Ring is better because the Twin Towers and Return of the King
because
are
it's a part of a story. And I feel that way with this, and I think I'm glad that they gave the time to flesh out things and do a bit of political intrigue and stuff. And even just the point where it ends is a strange point, but it makes sense because you can imagine that they're going to do everything with the Fremen, and they might even, I was saying to Amy, because of the visions, a lot of the visions that Paul has are of his life getting into the vibe with the Fremen and meeting the Zendaya and all that sort of stuff. And there's a bit where someone says, I'll show you the ways and stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if we then pick up again and he's had all that happen to him, and he's almost a
lot of those visions are false as well, because there's the guy who he sees a vision of him being I think taught stuff, and he's the guy that he has to fight to death. That's true.
So
I think some of these visions
and there's
are purposely contradictory.
Yeah, that was one thing. One of the criticisms that I had was there's certain things you see the vision where he thinks he's being killed in the duel, and it turns out he's the one doing the killing.
Yeah.
Certain things like that I think could have been done in a way where we have the realization of, it wasn't you that died, but they didn't really kind of emphasize that. I don't know if that's just it was supposed to be more subtle than.
I quite like the fact that we're seeing these visions as he's seeing them, but we don't know if that's what's going to happen. It totally. It kind of teases future plot points.
Yeah, I just didn't.
But
think
you constantly doubt them. It's not you see visions, and you're like, oh yeah,
well, that's the.
I know it's gonna happen.
I felt more on that side. I felt like, oh, okay, and then he has to say to someone, oh, I think I'm gonna die, and then we find out he does. I just feel like the payoff wasn't quite there, but it might have just been pacing. It might have been me personally.
One thing I do find funny is the amount of promo and interviews that Zendaya has done for this film.
Yes, and she's. I think I saw somewhere. I think 12 minutes, including the visions, because she's one of the first things that we see.
Yeah,
I think there's an intro scene, and then we see visions.
Aside from visions, she's less than 5 minutes.
Yeah,
time.
And it's it's so obvious. Obviously, they're gonna have to do more because she's obviously signed on for a contract. You'd have to. The same with people like Dave Bautista as well. He doesn't get a lot of play, but it's fine because it's part of a series.
Yeah,
but at the same time, something like Hunger Games, the first part is the whole book. Yeah. So it feels kind of there's a certain level of unsatisfyingness with this.
I think,
but I don't think that's.
I kind of share that in that it was almost kind of like, oh, I wish I could see more. But I feel like in 2 years, when we've watched the second one and go back, it'll be like, I wouldn't change a thing about this film.
Yeah, and I think
it's just having to wait the 2 years until the second.
Because I haven't watched the 1980s one, but I can. I've seen some clips recently because I watched VFX.
I started to watch it last year.
Yeah.
But I was doing some painting. I wanted to put something on in the background, and I realized first 10 minutes it was so like plot heavy.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not focusing on this enough
whilst
painting
because
and Sting plays Dave Bautista's character.
Is that right?
And Patrick Stewart plays
Josh Brolin's character.
Yeah,
because I saw the duel, the training duel with the shields.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
No.
Okay, the shields look fucking ridiculous. They are orange like cubes in the shape of a person, and you can't see the person underneath. So you can't see any emotion or expression, and it's literally two like cube men fighting each other, and it wasn't with CG because computers weren't available at the time. Okay, anyone just watch the VFX artists react. They basically not rotoscoped it, but they did layers to make like a 3D cube, like on different perspective, like physical perspective, and it's fucking. It looks terrible.
Okay. I kind of part of me wants to watch that and part of me wants to read the book, but also part of me wants to wait for the second half.
I'm 100% going to read the book because I've got it already. I started it.
Part of me thinks because my introduction to Dune as a story was the film, I might just hold off until the second film comes out and then watch the original film and read the book.
Oh, if you want to see like a couple of clips, watch that VFX artist react because there's some funny stuff. They don't spoil anything from the book. There's a little bit about the space travel and the use of the spice in that they talk about in the VFX artist react because it's featured differently in the film, which is more accurate to the book. But also that's something that might be explored in the second Dune film. So I can see your apprehension there, but
cool. I'm glad you finally watched it.
Yeah. I've got another thing to talk about. I think I'll save it for next episode because it's not. I'm reading some comics ongoing kind of thing.
Oh, nice.
I'll talk about it another time because I'd quite like to get into it a little bit. So we've had a slightly tighter episode this week, so I think we can revel in that.
Let's do
it. So I'd just like to thank you, the listener. Not you, Lewis, that I'm looking at. No, not you. No, thank you, Lewis. But thank you mostly, the listener, for listening. The one listener, the most important listener, you.
You. This person who's listening to us right now. You are the most important listener.
And if you, the person who listened to this, enjoyed the episode, I'd like you to go outside like you're Scrooge on Christmas morning. Probably should have said this for the Christmas episode.
Should have said this for Christmas, but go ahead anyway.
Like you are,
and
then
joke.
Say what Christmas is. Go outside and shout about the project.
Yeah, listen to the project.
And mainly, then you go back inside.
You can find it on Spotify and all podcasting platforms.
And because you're not Scrooge, you've got lots of friends and family, and then you tell them, oh, I've just listened to this podcast called The Project featuring Sam and Lewis. The podcast talks about pop culture and popular education. I can't ever say it unless
I'm Lewis. I'm just used to saying that a bit after you saying that.
And and you tell them all about it. And that, arguably, that's the best way. I would argue, Lewis, that's the best way for you to. Have you got another way that might be good for us and for everyone?
Yes, I mean, as well as sharing it amongst your friends, another good way of promoting the show. Give us a nice 5-star review on most podcasting platforms. Helps bump us up, puts our name out there, and introduces us to new listeners. So tell us what you like about the show, even if you don't like it. Do us a favor, give us 5 stars.
Yes, please.
And just if you're not particularly a big fan of the project, just like get your phone, press play on the episode, and just put it on silent and do something else.
Oh, absolutely.
And then give us a 5-star review.
Absolutely.
And tell everyone else to listen to the project. But I imagine that's just a few of you. I reckon most of you really like this, and we will be deserving of that 5-star review.
I think that is true.
And you can let us know also, can't you, Sam?
You can let us know if you want to let us know that you have seen Bigfoot and that your name is Mr. Michael Jones's. If you want to let us know that you have never seen the Bigfoot Project and you'd love to now watch it, now that you spoke to us. If you'd like to let us know that the reason that I said about Christmas Carol is because Simon Callow played Ebenezer Scrooge in 2001's Christmas Carol, the movie. then you can reach us at theprojectprojectpod@gmail.com, on Facebook and Instagram, The Project Project Pod. On Twitter, we are at That Project Pod. And on Reddit, we are The Project Project. We're also on YouTube. Just search for us. We actually come up surprisingly easy.
If any of you know Ricardo Herrera, get in contact. I'd love to chat with him because I really enjoyed his film.
Please do let us know.
But I think that is that.
That is that. And
thank you for listening, everyone. And I will hear you next week. Bye.
Bye.
I'm Bigfoot. I'm Bigfoot.